I never really said it like publicly, so I feel like it'll be kind of cool. Like if people see this, they'll be like, "What?" So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Melmage interview exclusive. I'll be sure to
exactly.
put this at front of it in the front of everything so people know
Okay.
to watch the whole interview. Hello, music listeners, music enthusiasts, and people who think the Baja Blast should be publicly available in all stores. Taco Bell, stop being so selfish. Today, I talked with Young Van, a prominent emo rap and alternative rock artist that has been very big and popular in the underground scene over the past 5 or so years. And we talked about his most recent album, Don't Change the Channel, which sees Young Van in a very organic alternative rock and other, related genres light. We talked about some general questions about his rise in the underground, some interests outside of music like his esports endeavors, as well as diving headfirst into the album and going track by track to discuss the thought process behind the production and technical qualities, as well as the emotion behind the lyrics. It was a lot of fun. Young Van's a lot of fun to talk to, and he has a lot to share. So I hope you all enjoy. First of all, thank you so much for hopping in here and letting me pick your brain for a bit. And to kick things off, I suppose, you have a discography that spans over 5 years with over 200 songs and I think 9 projects. When did you initially get into music and what was your introduction to the underground scene?
Um, well, I initially got into music, I guess, when I was like 9 or 10. I would like write songs like at school, like in a notebook when I was bored. Just start writing songs. And my dad and my mom actually, they both did music in the 90s. And so when I was growing up, my dad still was in bands and kind of had a recording studio like in our basement. Um, so when I was like 10, I'd written this song and it was called Blazing Eyes. And I'll share it with you later. I have it.
Hell yeah.
I have it, so I can show it to you. But yeah, I recorded that with my dad when I was like 10. He let me record it in the studio, and he did all the music, and I sang, and that was like my
Nice.
first introduction to like actually making music. Um, then flash forward like 9 years, I didn't do any music really between that span. Maybe like some rap, with your friends, like in high school, where you're
Yeah.
like,
Some
Let's do rap."
freestyles.
Yeah, like my best friend Jonathan, growing up, like he really wanted to do rap, and I had a Blue Yeti mic because I wanted to be a YouTuber actually. So I got a Blue Yeti mic for my birthday one year, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do YouTube. But then my best friend Jonathan, like maybe freshman or sophomore year, was like, yo, we should make some rap songs, and I was like, okay, like I have a mic, let's do it. And so we
Yeah.
just made some songs for fun, but we never really took it too seriously. And then like I guess senior year of high school is when I really got into music. I was in like my first relationship with someone. Um, and I don't know, I was in that relationship and I found like Spooky Black, I found Lil Peep, I found Oliver Francis, I found all these musicians who were like at the time like pretty underground. Um, and I was like, dang, this music's awesome. And so I started looking up how they were making it, and it was like they're just making it at home, like with some like really cheap mic and like really cheap equipment. And I was like, dang, I can do that. I've got GarageBand on my Mac. So I started recording in GarageBand, and um, yeah, from there I just started meeting people and started learning how to make music better. And yeah, now we're here.
Yeah, you said that both of your parents were involved in music and me music as well. Did the music that either they made or just the music you listened to growing up, maybe being exposed to it from them, influence how you maybe kicked off the music that you made?
Oh, for sure. Like I definitely was heavily influenced by, like I mentioned, like Lil Peep, Oliver Francis, and what else did I say?
Spooky
Spooky Black.
Black,
Like those are
yeah.
the three like really underground I found like when I started making music. But growing up, my parents were listening to like The Cure or AC/DC, um like a lot of like rock or like goth pop, I guess. Like Depeche Mode.
Yeah.
Um a lot of that kind of music. Yeah, it definitely did influence the kind of like melancholy kind of stuff I like to make.
Hmm.
So yeah, for sure, definitely listening to the stuff that they would play me growing up. The Cranberries, that's another
Yeah.
one as well.
Yeah, and those artists that you mentioned that first initially got you into music, especially in the underground scene, like Lil Peep and Spooky Black. In terms of your own music, you've stuck by like emo rap and alternative rock and related genres pretty consistently over the past few years. What is like your attraction to that genre? What compels you to sort of make sounds within that realm of sound?
Um, Probably ease. Like it's very easy for me to create that stuff because I've been doing it so long now. And I like a lot of my friends who are producers make that kind of sound, so it's really easy for me to just hit them up and be like, "Hey, like, can we make something like this?" Um, but more so in the like emotional realm, I guess it's just that's the kind of way I like to write music about how I'm feeling, and that feels like that's the kind of sphere of music that people do that in. Because like I love pop music and I love like a lot of different genres, but they don't really write in the way that like the alternative stuff gets written. Like it's way more like to the point and way
Yeah.
more I guess emotional, really about how people are feeling. And that's kind of the stuff I like to write about.
Yeah, it's almost like more organic in a way, like very like free
Yeah.
flowing stream of consciousness. And diverting from music a little bit, you seem to be viewed. The young Van reputation. You seem to be viewed as kind of like the nice guy of the scene, this big bastion of kindness and hope. How do you, with many
Yeah.
people attesting to your positive reputation, how do you feel about these comments and this reputation that you've garnered for yourself?
I'm really happy. I have a reputation of being like a really nice person. Um, I try my best to be, just there for people, especially like in the music realm. Like the music industry is really not a great place.
No.
So I really want to be that person that people can reach out to, like if they have questions or, if they get a contract for management or a label and they're like, dang, I have no idea what this is, and they don't have a lawyer, like I would read over it for people if they ask. Like I want to be someone people can reach out to. So I'm glad like I'm seen in hopefully an approachable way. Um, yeah, like I'm glad people think of me like that. Like I'm out here trying to make a difference for sure.
Hell yeah. Have you had bad run-ins or bad experience with like labels and more industry or corporate oriented people?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I've had people try to like, I know I've tweeted it and said stuff a bunch. Like I hate labels, and it's true for the most part. I do hate a lot of labels because a lot of labels just want to take advantage of people. Now that's
Yeah.
not true with all labels. Like a lot of more indie labels are way more um, one-on-one with artists, and they really work with artists. But like the big labels, they can do a lot of scummy stuff. But I have had like labels um, who I've talked to. I've been like, yeah, like maybe we could work together, and then they'll send me a contract, and the contract will literally be like, oh yeah, we own your masters for eternity. I'm like, what? No. Why would I ever sign? Like, who's reading that and going, "Wow, this looks like a good deal"?
They
But
just don't
what's
bet on people actually reading the contracts.
well, exactly, and the problem is like in the contracts they use language you wouldn't understand. So they'll use this. There's a phrasing called in perpetuity, and that's what they'll use. They'll say the masters will be owned herein in perpetuity, and you read that and you're like, "Huh, I don't know what that means." What that means is literally eternity. They will literally own it until the world collapses. So
It's just never
it's kind of
yours.
ridiculous. Yeah, exactly. It'll never be yours again. And I don't. And yeah, people know a lot more now. With the internet and stuff, you can look
Hmm.
stuff up. But like, I mean, for the years and years, like people have just been getting, taken advantage of. Um, and yeah, I have had run-ins where people have sent me just terrible deals. And thank God, like I had my dad because one time I almost signed this deal when I was like 20. Um, yeah, I was like 20, I think. Back like 2018, and I literally was about to sign this deal. I was texting my dad, and he called me, and he said, "Don't sign that deal until I can read it." And I was like, "It looks really good." He was like, "I don't care. Let me read it first." And I sent it to him, and then yeah, it had some really bad stuff in there that I didn't understand because of the language at the time. Um, and yeah,
Yeah,
so
it's like
I'm
it's
I'm
like
glad
predatory in a way.
it very much is. So basically, like I won't say any names, but the person when I told them my dad wanted to talk to me before I signed it, he was like, "Oh, so you need your dad to like be there for you.
Yeah.
You can't be your own person." I was like, well, "Why are you saying it like that? Like obviously I
Yeah.
want my dad to look over it. Like I'm not just trying to sign anything." But he knew that if I had my dad look over it, they would probably find the stuff that obviously was in there, um, and they did. So
No, dude,
I'm really glad I didn't sign that
yeah,
deal.
if I was like 30 and got like a label offer, I'd still be like, "Hey dad, I need you to look at this. Like I don't
Yeah,
trust my judgment or I don't want to overlook
exactly.
something."
It's
And
always nice to have someone else like
yeah.
just read over it with you.
Yeah, and over the years, with the growth of your music and I guess the growth of your brand in a way, you've done like a considerable amount of live shows, and you have affiliations with like Acid Castle that go pretty far back as well.
Hmm.
What was like your first live show like, and how do you think that you've grown as a performer since those first couple shows?
Wow. Um, Yeah, my first show was I think like August of 2017. It was in Indiana, and it was in someone's garage. It was like there was like 10 people there. It was in someone's
Nice.
garage. Um, one of my friends, uh, Bene, um, I know they were there, and then Irises. Yeah, I think Irises and Bene. They were the two guys that invited me. This was a long time ago, literally 2017. Um, Shout out them. They invited me to my first show. They're like, "Hey, we're doing a show in Indiana," and I drove up and they let me stay, like sleep on their couch. Um, But the experience, wow, I guess it was a lot of fun because I had never like done a show singing the Young Van stuff.
Yeah.
I'd like played drums in a band like in high school, or I had done like marching band or stuff like that growing up. So I'd done stuff musically, I guess, in front of an audience, but I'd never been able to like sing my own stuff, and so I was really nervous, but it was a lot of fun. And um, I sang a song I did with Garden, and I can't remember if it was Bene or Iris's. I had someone hold my phone and Instagram live it actually. So I had it Instagram live the whole time, and Garden was in the chat when I was singing my song that had him on it, and he actually said in the chat, like he said he was crying because he was so happy that I was
Oh.
singing our song. Um, and yeah, that was a really sweet night because I'd never done anything like that, and I was like, I think I just turned 19, and I was about to go to college, and yeah, it was a really sweet experience. It made me realize like I really like performing.
Yeah. What do you think, I suppose, makes or breaks a performance? 2017 is pretty far back. You've had a lot of
Yeah.
opportunities to do shows. You've gone on tour a few times. What would you say, like, when you get off stage, like, what are you thinking? Like, what makes you think, oh, that was a good performance, or it's like, oh, you know what, maybe I wasn't fully in it tonight.
I think what makes a good performance is not, and this is my own opinion because this may sound crazy, but like not caring about the
Yeah.
energy that the crowd gives. Because I think sometimes like if you're performing in front of an audience that doesn't really know you, they're maybe not gonna like they're not just gonna give you the energy like you may think like you deserve or like you may think that you should be getting from your song. So it's just like you just have to have fun and you just have to like give a good performance and then like some people's music's way more about singing, like you want to make sure you're hitting your notes and sounding really good, and some people's music's about jumping around and like having a lot of fun. So it's like just finding the in between. Like for me personally, I want to make sure like I'm being active and not just like standing in one spot on the stage,
Yeah.
and being very like involved, like looking at people and like maybe dancing a little bit, and having fun. And when the more songs that have vocal, I guess, performances in them, I try to do my best to like really give a good performance for those. But for the most part, I'm trying to be active and dance around and have a good time so that people can enjoy it. Because at the end of the day, it's supposed to be a performance, and
Yeah. It doesn't gotta be
I want it
perfect,
to be fun. Exactly. Like that's the biggest thing. Is like it's okay if you don't sound that great because people want, for the most part, just to have fun. And like I'm not a pop singer. Like people aren't coming to hear me like sing some crazy notes. They just want to hear the songs and have fun.
Yeah, they're not like waiting for you to get up on stage and do like some like Mariah Carey dolphin notes. That's not what they're
Exactly.
expecting from a young band concert.
Exactly. Hmm.
Yeah, and when looking at that balance between like this is a performance, so like obviously I'm going to focus more on being active and giving energy to a room rather than being maybe more so technically proficient. And
Yeah.
then also like balancing that with some where you have some maybe slower songs or more heartfelt songs where you are kind of going into the performance of the vocals rather than the presence as a whole. Do you have any songs that come to mind that are just kind of more catered to a live audience? Like these are songs that just work better live?
Oh, sure. That's something like as like you've mentioned, like doing a few shows. Like the first few shows, it's kind of like I'd sing a song and be like, "Huh, I thought this would do really well like live, and I thought people would like it more." But then like I could tell like it wasn't like a hit. I guess like people didn't enjoy it. And then there were other songs where I wasn't too sure it would be great. And then I was like, "Dang, people really like this song." Um, like there's a song that I have called um, "I Just Set Fire to My Room," and it's not one of my bigger tracks, but it does really well live because the energy of that song is like it's really high energy, so it's a
Yeah.
lot of fun. Um, and I can get really active and like dance around and sing it, and that's a good song. Whereas, you know, I Waited on You, my biggest song as well. Like that one's not as high energy, but you can still kind of like get high energy with the kind of like the vibes, I guess,
Yeah, I
if
mean,
that makes sense.
you can shift things to become more energetic or more catered. I saw Gucci High Waters live a couple years back in Ohio, and Gucci High Waters has a lot of very somber and melancholy songs with pretty like low energy. But those songs live were like bangers. Like
Yeah.
they really went hard, and I was really surprised to like see how you can kind of transform a song to be more suited for a live audience. But you did bring up, I Waited on You, which is your biggest song, and almost 4 years ago the song hit 2 million plays, and since then it's gained 10 million more. How do you think that your music as a whole, or creative process, or general perspective on music has changed since such a big milestone?
Um, I definitely think I started taking it a lot more seriously. Um, I think at first, like, I really just like doing music just because I had a lot of stuff on my mind that I needed to talk about, and I had been going to therapy, but I wasn't very honest with my therapist. So my music was like where I could be honest, and really talk about what I needed to talk about. And I guess once it started gaining traction, then I started being like, okay, like I want to make good music. Like my early stuff was like pretty lazy. Like not a lot of people know this, but I Waited on You was one take. Like I recorded that in one take, and there's no like ad libs or
Nice.
anything. It was just one recording. Now I recorded it multiple times. Like I wanted the take to be good, but I didn't cut it up. I didn't know how to do all that stuff. I didn't know how to like
Yeah.
chop up the vocals and like place them in the right spot. So I just recorded it in one whole take. Um, and so I used to be lazy in a sense that like I'd be like, oh, if I can't do it like this, then I don't want to do it. And I was kind of set in my ways.
Yeah, I understand. If it makes you feel any better, in the early tracks that I've made, I knew how to cut things up and re-record certain parts, and I just didn't because I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go one time. I don't feel like doing this multiple times over. One
Hey,
take or nothing.
yeah, exactly. And that's kind of where I got myself into. And I was like, I would do a take, and even if it's just like a 16-second part of the song, if there was like a tiny part off of it, I'd be like, nah, it gives it character. I wouldn't
Yeah,
like think about re-recording it. I don't feel that way now anymore because like I really want to make like the best product I can make that is good, and I would be proud to release and say that I made. So I definitely think like once the songs started getting bigger and I met more people and I was learning more about technical stuff, because I've had friends who went to school for mixing or friends who've gone to school for vocals. Um, Now I'm getting to learn a bit more, whereas before I really didn't know what I was doing. I was just kind of going off like tutorials on YouTube and stuff. Um, yeah, I definitely think I have learned a lot about how to make music and um, kind of the system I want to implement to make the best songs.
yeah. Well, speaking of making the best songs, speaking of putting effort in and making things you're proud of, you've just dropped an album. Don't change the channel.
Yeah,
Which is fantastic. But before we get into it, I
thank
do
you.
have one more question because it's not related to music. So I
Okay.
wanna talk about it real quick. You've been involved, and you've vocally expressed how much you love and care about esports, even saying that it was your first dream before making music.
Yeah.
How did you start off with your involvement in esports, and what, I guess, sort of what space did you operate in when achieving or pursuing that goal?
Yeah. So, I played video games since I was a kid. I think like most people who are about my age, grew up late '90s, like early 2000s. Like video games was a big thing. Um, but when I was in eighth grade, I had a friend named Igor. He was from Brazil, and we hung out a few times. One time he came over to my house and he downloaded this game on my computer called League of Legends. And at the time, I thought the game sucked. And I was like, I don't want to play this. Let's go do something else.
That's how it always
But
starts.
yeah, but I didn't uninstall it. And so, like, almost over a year later, I was at my dad's house visiting him over the summer, and I was bored. My cousin was visiting too. And we were like, oh, let's play some video games. And I saw I had this game on my computer named League of Legends, and I was like, "What's this?" And so I was like, "Hey, let's play this game." And so we started playing it, and on the way to drop him off to the airport, I was googling the game, just looking at it more because I was like, "Wow, it's kind of fun." And I saw there was this thing called like the LCS, which is like the pro scene, and I saw there were pros, and they were like an interview with them. And I was like, "Wait, you can play this game professionally?" And yeah, ever since then, like that was my goal. Not my goal anymore, but like when I was a kid, when I was like 16, when I was playing and I saw that, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go pro. So I literally just started no lifing, and I played league a lot. And yeah, it was really my goal. And then I found out that you could go to college and get some scholarships. There were some schools offering scholarships to play league, and so in 2017, or actually, this is a funny story. So my junior year of high school, I started looking at colleges because that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to start looking when you're a
Yeah, that's
junior.
what they tell you to do.
Yeah, so like I was like, okay, I'll start looking now, and I was pretty decent at league. Like um, I think my rank at the time was Diamond 3, but back then that was like the top 2,000 on the server. And so I was like, okay, I definitely can find a college team. And so I reached out to this one school, actually two schools, RMU, which doesn't exist anymore, and then Columbia College, which is in Missouri. Um, and I tried out for the team. I was like, hey, I'm super interested in coming to your school. And I tried out and I actually got an offer. They were like, "Hey, we want you to come play in fall." And I said, "Oh, I'm a junior in high school." And they
Oh
were like, "Wait, this
no.
was only seniors were supposed to be trying out." And I was like, I was apparently the only junior who had tried out, and I didn't realize that. And so I was like, "Oh no, I can't." And they were like, "Okay, well, come back in a year and we'll talk about it." And so a year later, they got a new coach, and they actually didn't have a spot for me on the team anymore. It's kind of funny story, I guess, but they had said, okay, we'll bring you in and we'll put you under like the analyst position. Like you can
Yeah.
be our analyst and you'll just end up subbing for the team. And so for my time there for like the 2 years, I kind of subbed in and out like different positions. Um, but that was my first experience with esports. But now I'm at this school called Siena Heights University. I graduate in December, so I'm super excited. But yeah, I play league here, and it's been it's been really great. Like
Yeah.
yeah,
Other than league, in the new school, you're graduating soon. What degree are you going for?
I'm getting a degree in business administration. So
Okay.
really just wanted to learn more about the business world, especially with music. Like business is a big part of music.
Oh
So
yeah, and business degrees are so versatile.
yeah,
If
exactly.
you want to take that into music, you can. If you want to take that into literally anything else, you probably can.
Yeah, that is literally why I did this degree, just because I can go anywhere, wherever my heart desires. I can probably find a job.
All right. Well, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the album. I have a lot of questions, 3 pages worth. So I hope you're
Oh
ready.
wow,
I hope you're
I'm
ready.
ready.
And before we get into the track list specifically, what does like the title of the project mean to you, and how is it applied in the context of this album?
So don't change the channel. It's kind of like this concept of almost like this person having kind of a mental breakdown, and he's experiencing um, someone literally in the TV screen, like who's alive almost, like they've broken the like fourth wall and they're talking to them, and they don't want them to change the channel because the whole idea is like what happens um, when you change the channel. Like the character has become conscious of
Yeah.
life and everything around, and now they're worried. Now that they are alive, they're like, well, if you change the channel, do I die? So that's the whole concept of the album. It's like what happens next. So I guess it's almost about like life and death, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Kind of like taking the, you kind of have like a sort of like a dynamic between performer and observer.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
And Dementia has production credits all throughout this project. What was it like
hmm
working so closely with him and to develop the instrumentals of the project? And how did working with mainly a singular producer affect the overall workflow and sound of the album?
Um, well, first off, it was a lot of fun. I'm like really glad I did it because we had talked about doing a few things, but then we really like, and honestly, this project was just an EP at first, and then we built it into a full project like as time went on. But it was a lot of fun. I'm like really happy with how it turned out overall, where the sound really feels very collected, and it feels like just one singular piece of music, like a whole project. Um, but it was great. I mean, seriously, I was really inspired by there's this band called the Benjamin Gate, Radiohead, um, My Bloody Valentine, um, The Cure, like a bunch of different alternative artists. And what I would do is I'd find a song that I really loved by one of those artists, um, and I would send it to Dementia, and I'd be like, "Hey, can we write a song that sounds something like this?" And then an hour later, well, we'd be in Discord and he'd have already written like guitar that's like sounds amazing, and I'd be like, all right, this is it. And so then he would send me, really just like a rough draft version, and I would sing over it, and then I'd send him my vocals, and he'd, really build up the beat from there, and then mix and master it, and then boom, it was done.
Yeah. And the album kicks off with Nightfall, which is a dark R&B track that's just over a minute in runtime, kind of
Yeah.
describing this statement and question dynamic with recognition of how things are okay, which kind of turns to the question for the need of like remedy despite a somewhat decent situation. How do you think that this track sets the precedent for the rest of the project, and why is it so important to have this before anything else?
So we had basically written like eight or nine songs. Like the album was done pretty much, and I like had just really wanted a opening track that I felt like fit the project. I was like really like when writing the tracks, I knew almost where the track was gonna go. Like I knew
Yeah.
one song was gonna be the final song, or I knew this song would probably be in the middle of the album. But like this one, writing Nightfall, I was like, this is going to be the opener. Like I really wanted it to be um, a good kickstart for the album, and it was really inspired by this band called Metric, this Canadian band. They came out with an album recently, and their first song was like 13 minutes long. It's this crazy song called Doom Scroller. And I started listening to it. I never listened to the full 13 minutes, but I kept listening to the first few minutes of that song, and I was like, wow, I really like this. And so I reached out to Dementia, like I mentioned, and I was like, hey, let's try to do something like this. I was like, obviously not 13 minutes. I don't want it to be a crazy long song, but I was like, I just want this kind of dark kind of tone, um, but not completely dark. Like there's pieces of like hope and in the song. And anyway, for that song, yeah, it's really about just kind of this person um, feeling like they're telling themselves like it's gonna be okay, like it's fine, but the they're really not almost, and that they really feel like they are missing something, and they really do need it. And yeah.
Yeah, and then it's followed up by Parasite, which is where we kind of get the first glimpse of the alternative rock sound that this album has seemed to be defined by. And it kind
Yeah.
of talks about addictions and relationships turned problematic or toxic. And then you, of course, have support from Dementia and Dion Douglas on this as well.
hmm
How do you think that the topic at hand here affected you, and how did it influence the creation and lyrics of this song?
Um, First off, I just want to mention it's Dion Dugas, not Douglas, just to say. But I just know Dion
No,
would roast me if I didn't say anything.
Dion,
So
I apologize.
yeah, so Dion Dugas. Okay, so yeah, this song is just about like so Parasite really is about just watching someone go through something and not really being able to help them. And it feels like a parasite. It feels like they've been, taken over by something that they have no control over, and you can't see it, you can't fix it. Um, and that's why the chorus is like the lyrics are "Stay alive. I'm growing tired of like fearing for my friends," because it's like you just watch your friends go through. So your friends or your family, your loved ones,
Yeah.
you watch them go through stuff, and it's really hard to see them struggling when you can't save them. Like they need to want to get help for themselves, or they need to want to, or they just need to be at that point in their life where they're like, okay, something's got to change, and no matter what you say, like it can't fix it. So that song's really about just the hopelessness you feel when your friends are going through something like that.
Yeah, and you seem to, I guess, follow up on a lot of these ideas and mirror the concepts that are on Parasite on The Observer, which kind of continues the themes, this time with maybe more so the perspective of the aftermath of events, kind of on
hmm
the come down of a relationship. How do you view the balance between accepting a relationship with somebody has run its course, which is a display of like not wanting to be left,
Yeah,
despite knowing who this person has become?
in that song particularly, it's really just about kind of like Parasite, a little bit more on the nose, I guess, with the lyrics, kind of just saying it, but seeing someone kind of become a different person almost. They're not really who they were, and knowing you can't like go inside them and just find the real them,
Yeah.
like it's impossible. There's parts in relationships, whether it be with a loved one or a friend, that yeah, they just change, and that's just part of life. But it doesn't make it any easier when that relationship stops and you're like, dang, like we're not friends anymore, or we're not dating anymore, or it's never easy to go through. And so that song's really just about kind of seeing that happen and knowing like even though you've gone through all this stuff with that person, like you can't you can't save them. I guess that's really all it's about, is just not
Yeah.
being able to save somebody.
Yeah. And then, followed up, you have I Can't Save Myself. And I feel like this deep into the
Yeah.
project, the experimental alt rock sound is solidified. Like
Yeah.
you've made it clear by this point, like this is the defined sound that you're going for, and it really hammers it home. How do you think that this song, I guess, addresses the concepts of identity and inversely like self denial?
Yeah. So like I guess let me go back to the start just for a second. So like Nightfall, it's really about, there is a sense of like, in all these songs, maybe a subtle sense of like addiction really being like also one of the key points as well. Because the lyrics in that are, um, like everything's okay in Nightfall, but then at the end it's like, then why do I need it? Because it's like being an addict, like
Yeah.
whether that be you're an addict for a person or for a drug or for um, a hobby or for a passion. Like I mean, you can be addicted to anything, but so why do you need it? And then Parasite comes in, and you're seeing something happen to someone, and it's killing you on the inside. And then the Observer comes in, you're watching it, from a distance now. You're no longer really, um, close to that person. And then I Can't Save Myself is really, I guess, solidifying that concept where it's like this person is really going through something, and they're pushing everyone away, like they don't want to be with anyone, they don't want to be close to anyone, and they're struggling, but they do know at the end of the day, like they can't do it alone. And that's like where, I want to garden on that song because it is like a song where it's like, you're reaching out for somebody, you're reaching out to a friend, you're like, I can't save myself. Like
Yeah.
I need someone else to be there for me. Um, and that really is what this song is about. I guess it's like the pinnacle, almost the climax of this part or this theme of the album about really like needing help almost.
Yeah, and so correct me if I'm wrong, but I guess what you're saying is like Garden's inclusion on that was almost like a metaphor for that very concept of like
Hmm.
reaching out and having someone assist you. And you know you've
Exactly.
you've you know you described how these first few tracks on the album sort of connect and bridge over
Hmm.
narratively, and throughout the album there's a lot of like subtle nods to indirect or direct narratives sprinkled throughout. Does this album follow a narrative of linear events, or are the lyrics more so taken from life experiences over the course of different eras of your life?
It's kind of a mix of both. Definitely, I feel like this album was really a growing piece for me. Like I felt like I talked about a lot of stuff that happened, like yeah, like growing up into where I'm at right now. So I talked about different things that happened, different life experiences, but also yeah, there is that subtle like um, concept about this person really just having a breakdown from being isolated and from kind of being pushing people away and like really trying to do it all by themselves. And that's why I like this song so much because it really talks about all that.
Yeah.
And that's why that guy has that character. Like he's so alone, like he starts to hallucinate almost in a sense that there is this character on the screen that's like asking him all these questions. But it really is more so just like a projection of how they're feeling um, and what they're going through.
Yeah, like their emotions are being reflected in what they think they're seeing on
Exactly.
this TV screen. Yeah.
Exactly.
And then there's Stay a Little Longer, which sits in the middle of the album, and maybe not narratively, but it kind of almost acts at the climax of energy, especially vocally.
Yes.
The,
Hmm.
the the energetic peak on this track in the chorus is absolutely crazy. But it also seems to be the inverse of earlier tracks, with like empathy bleeding through the verses, and where it sits in the middle, it kind of brings up the question, sort of related to what we just talked about with the track list ordering. And I know that you mentioned earlier
Yeah.
that you kind of like already knew like when a track was made where you wanted it to sit. What was the thought
Yes.
process and methodology of arranging these tracks in the order that they're in?
Um, so like the first and last track, like I mentioned, like I knew Nightfall was gonna be the first one, and I knew the final song, The Kids Are Sleeping, was gonna be like the outro song. With everything else, I didn't really know. I knew I wanted the song Don't Change the Channel to be the middle track, like, either fifth or sixth. But when we had recorded all the songs, like I did sit there for a while and I listened to all the songs and I wanted to make sure it was really portraying the story. And so that's why I wanted Nightfall to be first, talking about this moment where you're just like questioning why do you feel the need for this thing. And Parasite talks about, seeing someone go through something, you can't help them. The Observer is talking about the same thing. Then I can't save myself, what they're going through, they're pushing people away. And then Stay a Little Longer, like you mentioned, is kind of the climax, in the sense that this person, um, is kind of at the ropes and you're kind of pleading for them. And you're kind of seeing what they're going through, but saying like, hey, like, it's gonna be okay. Like we can
Yeah.
make it through this. Like, that's really what this song is about because, um, yeah, I mean, this song's really just about suicide and seeing people struggle with suicidal tendencies and really just being like trying to be there for them.
Yeah.
That's what this song is about. Like, stay a little longer. Like, you just want them to stay.
Yeah, just just a little bit, one at a time, a little bit at a time, pretty much.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then you have, Don't Change the Channel, which goes back to that concept that we've talked about a couple times of equating this like isolation or relationship with being
Hmm.
that like viewer performer dynamic, watching the TV, not changing it so that that person stays. And so it acts as the titular song for the project. So how do you think that this song embodies the themes and the concepts spread throughout the album as a whole?
Well, first off, Simbex did like a really good job because I gave her this like concept. Like I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I know this is weird, and like I didn't really know her, but I'd heard some of her music. Like she only has like 5 or 6
I
songs,
mean,
and
she killed
but I
it. She
really
did a
liked.
great job.
Yeah, she's really talented, and I really liked what she did. And so I was like, hey, like, do you want to work on a song for this album I'm working on? She was like, oh, sure. And then I was like, okay, so this is kind of crazy, but here's the idea. And so they were super really receptive of what I said, and when I heard what they had written, I was like, wow, this is great. So I really wanted this to more so encapture the kind of, story that I was really trying to portray with the character and like with the cover art about this person being kind of like stuck, and just the whole idea of like life and death, like what happens when the channels change. Like, do I die or do I just
Yeah.
move to the next stage? Like, is it just the next part of my life or is my life over? um yeah, I guess kind of about change. Like that's really what it's
Yeah,
about,
like
like
that.
being scared of change.
Yeah, like that huge feeling of like uncertainty, just like
Hmm.
having no idea. And then Sunless Space to me stands out a lot because it's a very droning and dark track powered by this, distorted bass and almost kind of eerie vocals in a way. How was the
Yeah.
process of mixing and producing this track and writing the lyrics? Like how do all of these elements kind of combine to address the feelings of isolation and almost hopelessness that is displayed on the track?
Yeah, Sunless Space definitely one of my favorites on the album as well. When Dementia first sent me the beat or like the production he was working on for this song, I honestly wasn't the biggest fan. I didn't know like how I would get on it like vocally.
Yeah.
I was like, dang, like I'm not even sure how I'm supposed to write this. I mean, that's why this project was so fun to me personally, because I'm so used to like, trap drums, and guitar, or just like synths or stuff like that.
Yeah.
But this was like just a super bass heavy track, and I was like, well, what am I supposed to do? So anyway, um, I was actually on Christmas break, and I was sitting in my room, and I was alone. Uh, it was nighttime. Everyone was sleeping, and I was just like, I'm gonna write to that song. And so I just like started listening to it on loop, and I just started writing. And I had just recently been listening to a lot of Foo Fighters and Nirvana, and so I didn't know that Kurt Cobain was on a lot of heroin when he killed himself. And so this song's really about Kurt Cobain. Like that was like
Yeah.
the inspiration behind this track was about Kurt Cobain's suicide. But it was more so about like the aftermath. I guess like thinking
Yeah.
about, this person's killed himself, but who has to come and see it? Like who has to come witness it and like be like, okay, wow, this person is dead.
Yeah,
Like
like who
now
does
we've got
that
to
fall
call.
upon?
Exactly, exactly. Like who does that like that grief and that pain like go on to? Because it doesn't just go away. Like that's the whole point is that like the pain doesn't just disappear. Like it gets transported almost into another person. And so
Yeah.
that was the whole idea behind this song. And yeah, I really like this song. It's just about, once again, just kind of the dark part of, being alive and the aftermath of taking your own life, and more specifically like just about Kurt Cobain's suicide because his I think it was his gardener found him
Hmm.
um, dead, and it was really just about this idea of like writing about the heroin because I talked about how like before it really made him happy, but then it like wasn't doing that anymore. Um, and then he ended up taking his own life. But
Yeah, like this passing of grief almost.
exactly, like that the chorus is all about that, like all by yourself, like no matter like even though like you're just there, you're in isolation, like the whole kind of concept, and you've taken your own life, but you're still like all by yourself, and like the grief hasn't gone
Yeah.
anywhere. Like it's just gonna go to the next person.
Yeah. And following up, I guess I have a pretty straightforward question for Cloud Chaser, which is, in the context of the track, to you, what does it mean to be a cloud chaser?
So being a cloud chaser in this song, like how I felt like it's portrayed in the whole concept of the album, is like being a caretaker almost like being an angel, like watching over someone. Like you're a cloud chaser, you're making sure um, that someone's okay and that you're there for them. Um, so that's really what it's about. Like I thought it was like in my head it was like so perfect because the whole album really changes after Sunless Space. Like it becomes way more like indie,
Yeah.
way more like more upbeat, like alternative rock kind of stuff. Whereas before it's very experimental, it's very dark. Like Sunless Space is really the darker part, and then it kind of
Yeah.
lifts back up with Cloud Chaser. And I wanted it to be that way because I didn't want it to feel so like doomer that like it's hard to listen to the whole album in one
Yeah.
sitting. But Sunless Space really brings you down, like with the end with the gunshot. It's like to signify the person's dead, and then Cloud Chaser comes in, and it's like this concept of this person like watching over them and protecting them.
Well, yeah, well, and that way you're essentially like contrasting between the two songs, contrasting the idea of like isolation and hopelessness with the idea that somebody is looking out for you, that somebody is watching you. Yeah,
Exactly.
and it's funny you bring that up in terms of the energetic shift after Sunless Space, because on Hide Your Tears, out of all the songs here, this one seems to be the most inspired by like pop punk waves and pop punk influences and indie sounds. How has your approach been to more organic instrumentals, and how do they differ from working with instrumentals with more trap and synthesized elements in terms of your approach to them?
I guess I feel like I can do a lot more vocally because there's a lot more space to work with. Like when there's a lot of trap drums, it does feel like certain cadences work better than others. But when it's mostly just like of guitar and like a drum kit, it seems like there's a lot more space to like sing and do stuff. So Hide Your Tears was a lot of fun, and it was just about like after Cloud Chaser, like wanting to be close with someone and like protect them. Hide Your Tears is really about wanting someone to let you in. Like you don't have to hide your tears. Like you can show me like their pain. Like you can let me in and I can help you. And that was the whole concept behind that song.
Yeah. And then closing things out, we have "The Kids Are Sleeping," which is an instrumental that kind of takes a bit more of like a dreamy bedroom pop, bedroom rock approach.
Yeah.
How does this song play into the album as a whole as the closer? Like, why does this end things off?
This song for me, and with the album, like I want it to end on kind of like a high note, like very melancholy, I'd say, but still has a lot more high energy. This song is just about growing up. It's about like seeing people, specifically your parents, um, like as these beings, these gods that know everything and they're all knowing, but then realizing they're just human. Um, and that kind of like, yeah, is kind of sad and melancholy, but it also makes you realize like your shortcomings are not that bad. Like you're also just human. Like you don't have to compare yourselves to these gods that like you've looked up to
Yeah.
since you were a kid. Um, and that's how I wanted it to end off on, like this moment of just kind of like growing up and um, realizing to be comfortable like with who you are.
Yeah, like a lot of the lyrics on the track address like acceptance and some this sort of admiration, like you said, with like seeing your parents as these like all-knowing beings. But I feel like a lot of these lyrics and ideas are also kind of mixed with a fear and reluctance to be seen objectively by others.
Hmm.
How do you think these kind of like juxtaposing concepts mix in terms of like relationships or just like life in general?
A lot of the times when I'm writing songs, like I really just write. um, whatever I'm thinking, or if I have something that really inspired me or I really want to talk about. But with this album, like, yeah, it was a mix of things. It was like, yeah, a mix of approval, a mix of seeing someone like struggling, you can't help them, addiction, suicide. Like, I wanted to take all these concepts and kind of put them together. And I guess the glue that was holding it together is this kind of idea of this person who's kind of struggling and almost seeing a character on a TV
Yeah.
screen. And that kind of helped me in my head, like put it all together into its own like story and kind of piece these um, different themes together. Because yeah, normally if you listen to all these songs separately, or if I had released them all as singles, you may not see them as like a full piece like that goes together. But when
Yeah.
you listen to it in this order and how like we've curated it almost like it really does tell more so of a story of like growing up and acceptance and yeah they're struggling but knowing like you can't do it all yourself. um
Absolutely. Yeah, and I'm glad you say that because listening to the album, like it is to me personally at least. Oh, there goes my mic. To me personally at least, it is so clear that like there is such an important connection between each track here. And that's
yeah,
kind of what gives the album like cohesiveness. No, where all of these songs very much do connect. But we've reached the end of the album, and we've got your thoughts on each and every track.
yeah.
So I guess to close things out, tell us what you've been up to. Anything to look forward to from Young Van? Any big drops, big deals, big events? What's going on in your life?
There's definitely a lot to talk about. Before I talk about that though, I do want to give a quick insight to one of the songs on the album. This song
Oh, for
Cloud
sure.
Chaser, that feature is my sister on that song.
Okay.
um my sister was on it, and that song is actually a cover of my mom's song from the 90s. So
No
that's the song
way.
my yeah, that song was written by my mother. And I think my dad produced that song originally. Like the original track was they wrote it or like recorded it together. But yeah, when I was doing the project, I knew I wanted to do something like that. And so that was the song we picked, and then I had my sister sing it with me.
That's
So yeah,
crazy. That's so cool,
just a
actually.
yeah,
I feel
just
like
a little secret
everything's
thing.
I feel like everything's come full circle now. Like I feel like
Yeah.
everything makes so much more sense. That's awesome. That's sick.
Yeah, I wanted to say that just so like if people were watching this, then because like I never really said it like publicly, so I feel like it'll be kind of cool. Like if people see this, they'll be like, "What?" So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Melmige interview exclusive. I'll be sure to
exactly.
I'll be sure to put this at front of it in the front of everything so people know to
Okay,
to watch the whole interview.
cool.
Um but
Um,
yeah, what's next for you? Any shout outs you want to make? I don't care. This is your time. Say whatever you want.
yeah, definitely. I am working on. Well, I'll say this: I've already recorded a second album,
Oh
so
my
I already have
gosh.
a 15 track album. Um, 12 songs and then like three like kind of story elements, like an intro, an interlude, and an outro. But yeah, 12 full songs I recorded in the last few months. Like as I was finishing Don't Change the Channel, I'd already started writing a whole nother album, which is also like a concept album about some crazy stuff. I won't go too much into like what it is, but like
Yeah, we'll
I
keep
think
we'll
it'll
keep
be kind of
information
crazy.
low for now, so the
Um,
reveal is a lot more impactful.
exactly. But there is another album that will drop sometime this year, and then I am also working on two separate EPs, some smaller projects with some people. One of them is a collab EP, like so it'll be me and this other artist on each song together,
All right.
which will be really cool. And then one of the other ones is um, just me and this one producer, because I've really like realized after doing this with dementia, like I do kind of want to stick with doing projects with one person. I feel like you can be a lot more creative and you can get a lot more out of it doing it that way.
Yeah.
But I also do have a few singles I'm working on that won't go on a project, but are some cool collabs that I've got coming out too. So definitely a lot of like I'm in high gear this year, so there's gonna be a lot of music coming out, which I'm super excited about.
This is your year. You
Exactly, like
got it. This
I'm
is your
really going
year.
crazy. I'm dropping so much music this year.
All right. Well, thank you so much, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course.